Okay, again.
So, good evening, class. Today, me and my group members, Rishma Suknanan, Lisa Silal, and myself, Anvika Maharaj, will be presenting on Chapter 9, Being in Communities. Before we begin, me and my group members have prepared and put together a short skit, just about 1 minute, so you will have an idea about what this chapter will be about and a little insight on what will be discussed before we actually get into the context of the lesson. So without further ado, let's take a look of that video. Okay, I think the video is stuck. Hold on. Okay.
Lisa's Wi-Fi is currently down. She's sorry that she's missing the run-through for a leadership and ethics group presentation. Suddenly, her phone rings. She picks up the phone and sees that it is her group members calling. She proceeds to answer her phone and the following conversation takes place.
Hi Anvika, what's up?
Hi Lisa, how are you? We were really worried when you did not show up for our group dry rehearsal this afternoon. Is everything okay?
I'm fine, thank you for noticing my absence, but I'm unable to join the meeting because my Wi-Fi is currently down due to excessive rainfall. I was just about to call you guys after noticing it was down for a long period of time.
Oh, well, that's okay. We will inform you in what you've missed, and we will have another rehearsal on Friday. We look forward to seeing you then. Take care. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Alright, we will actually begin the presentation now.
The preceding group seems to be a healthy community. Not only was Lisa's absence noticed by the other members, but they also cared enough to check up on her and offer to fill her in on the things that she would have missed. From this interaction, Lisa knows that in this community, she matters. Short introduction. Now, what is community? A community can be described as a social unit comprising of individuals with unified interests. By being a part of a community, compelling feelings are evoked both on micro and macro levels, especially when community members come together to accomplish a greater goal. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020 was initiated by the Black community to fight back against the injustices committed unto them. In this case, the feeling of solidarity would have been invoked within them, and they would have united to achieve a common goal. Chapter Overview. This chapter discusses the nature of communities, principles of community development, and your role as an active member of your communities of practice. The importance of community. Communities are not perfect. To illustrate this point, all people of color in the United States are classified into a general community known as minorities. These minorities tend to go through many issues solely because of their race and suffer lots in social, racial, and economic spheres. To raise awareness to these situations and thereby fight for the institutionalization of a more level playing field for all races, many movements emerged, the most recent being the ongoing Asian American and Pacific Islander, or the AAPI movement. This movement has arisen due to the increased level of hate crimes mainly directed towards East Asian Americans, including the physical and verbal assaults targeted towards the elderly, the recent Atlanta shooting where 6 of 8 women murdered were of East Asian descent, and the constant blame being cast on Asians for both causing and spreading COVID-19. With this movement, however, there's a lot of division between the minorities due to the model minority myth. And this is a myth propagated by white supremacists that suggests that Asians in America are wealthy because they have worked hard and that the other minorities are still struggling financially because they do not work as hard as the Asians. This myth completely ignores the fact that wealthy Asian families were inducted into America in the 1960s for this very purpose of division. Due to this growth in the community, the movement has not had the traction it needs to be recognized as a serious issue. However, if all minorities were to band together in their community and stand up to fight the root cause of racism, there would be growth and results for everyone because by an integrated community coming together to achieve a shared purpose, a revolution can be initiated and thereby spark change. And here we have examples of minority movements. Gardner 1990 asserts that skill in the building and rebuilding of community is not just another of the innumerable requirements of contemporary leadership. It is one of the highest and most essential skills a leader can command. What Gardner is illustrating here is the concept of relational leadership, which is deemed as crucial in modern day leadership. In my understanding, relational leadership refers to a model or perspective on leadership that is centralized on the concept of leadership effectiveness being directly correlated to the ability of leaders to foster and create positive relationships within an organization. In order to achieve these positive relationships, not only must community members understand themselves and others, but they must additionally understand the context in which their group or organization functions. Picture any group you have experienced where you felt like a conscientious being making a meaningful contribution, a group where you felt as though you actually mattered. The group could have been a choir, a sports squad, or even one related to your studies or job. The point is, you felt a sense of belonging in this context, which would have increased your commitment to that whole. However, this is not representative of all groups, as you can probably recall a group where you felt little commitment, possibly due to little value you may have placed on it. Though the group would have probably achieved its goals, some members would have not enjoyed working together and would probably reject any opportunity where they may have to work together again due to the lack of community they would have experienced in this context. From these contexts, we can see that both are inherently different in that one functions in a positive setting, whereas the other functions in a more negative setting. Applying this to the relational leadership concept, context 1 perfectly exemplifies how the setting of a healthy community can lead to positive relationships where common goals are achieved as members work together in shared leadership. Elements of community. As aforementioned, a community is most often described as a social group that not only shares an identity and structured pattern of interactions, but also a common geographical territory, and this is according to Goodman 1992. However, a community is more than just a place of interaction, as it must also encompass connection and commitment in order to sustain relationships and purpose, thereby realizing the essence of relational leadership. For instance, the phone call to Lisa may not seem to depict leadership from a surface level, but imagine that each member of this little group matters so much that their absence becomes a cause for concern, with the members looking out for each other. In such a group, each person feels valued and appreciated, thereby leading to more commitment and teamwork. As such, communities know that trust and teamwork between members is necessary to accomplish their goals. For this to ensue, processes to make decisions, methods of communication, and commitment to participation are required of community members. Gardner in 1990 extends the traditional definitions of community to refer to effective communities as those that practice these eight elements. 1. Wholeness incorporating diversity. 2. A shared culture. 3. Good internal communication. 4. Caring, trust, and teamwork. 5. Group maintenance and governance. 6. Participation in shared leadership tasks. 7. Development of young people or new members. And 8. Links with the outside world. A music group would be the perfect illustration of these eight elements. Not only would they have to be accepting of each other's different perspectives regarding sounds and lyrics, but they would also have to work as a team, have a shared work ethic, communicate well, and participate in meaningful conversations with each other, develop each other in terms of diversifying their abilities, and have links to people on the outside, be it for album sales, artist features, or even to other companies should their current one fail them. As such, by working together as a team, this group will develop a shared culture, thereby making many other relational processes possible. And here we have an example of a music group. Changing views of community. Many traditional views of community are changing. From a conventional viewpoint, communities are presented as homogeneous groups with much in common, including ideology, race, or class. As per Gurikund's 1991, cultural and ethnic diversity, and all other forms of diversity as well, are necessary resources for building community. A true community cannot exist without diversity. While this may be true, the diversity of ideas, skills, experiences, and worldviews bring the talents of community members to the group's shared goals. Other traditional views have held that communities need face-to-face interaction, which is possible only through close geographic proximity. In contemporary society, however, the term community also describes those with common identity and interaction, but without geographic proximity. This can be exemplified through electronic networks, which have provided a creative way for communities of common interests to interact. Social media apps, online discussion forums, and streaming sites constitute an interweb allowing individuals from across the globe to meet and form active communities with one another. And here we have a summary of both stances. Non-interactive community. You can also find identity and feel a sense of community with others without interacting. For example, if you are an activist, you feel a close connection to the struggles of people of color. If you're concerned about poverty, you feel a sense of community listening to those involved with charities, spreading awareness about it. If you participate in community service concerned with abused children, you feel anguish over the latest tragedies reported on the radio, and you can empathize with social workers struggling to find solutions to this problem. As human beings, we all want meaningful connection to others. Settings that are inclusive and empowering, in which there's purposeful change being accomplished through ethical and collaborative processes, are the epitome of effective communities. Relational leadership flourishes in settings that value the elements of community. And here we have some examples of communities to which one may feel connected without interaction.
Okay, I will begin my part now. So, a common center. So, in his 1958 classic, I and Zhou, Martha Baba contends that in our life together, some form of community is what make, makes life worth living. He describes community as a group of people who have made a choice around a common center. What is a true community? A true community is not a collection of people who all think alike, but people with different minds and complementary natures. So, for example, let's say, for instance, perhaps you are friends with a group of girls you met at Custard. Even though everyone in that said community are friends, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is alike or thinks alike. Yes, you all may share certain similarities. However, you have to keep in mind that everyone comes from different backgrounds, has different mindsets, experiences, and share different beliefs, which will shape their way of thinking and therefore make them their own unique person. A community was defined as the binding together of diverse individuals committed to a just, common good through shared experiences in a spirit of caring and social responsibility. So, to create a healthy community, all members of that community must be willing to work together to achieve a common goal. So, this means that members must be willing to share ideas, thoughts, views, and opinions. Without these, things might not be as smooth, and as such, the outcome may not be the best. Developing communities like this depends on relational leadership that deeply values the inclusion of all members, empowered to work together towards common purposes, and as such, in these communities, openness is a central practice. So, to add to the point that I just made, it all depends on how much the leader cares and values the inclusion of everyone. So, in a community, you cannot favor certain individuals because they might be good at doing a certain something, but all members should be treated equally. So, for example, let's say Mark is part of a music band, and that music band is entering a competition, and their goal is to place first. So, just as anyone would, right? So, Mark, so that's not hard, hold on. Right. So, let's say Mark isn't as good as playing the piano. That doesn't mean that you exclude Mark from playing in the competition. However, you as a leader and as a community, you would help Mark become better at playing the piano, even if it takes staying back and giving him extra lessons. This shows that you care about him and you want him to feel included. As they say, teamwork makes the dream work. If the leader wants a certain outcome, then he or she must make sure that each member of that community is willing to work at their best to achieve that goal. True dialogue requires listening and being willing to give up the need for control, even when your ideas and thoughts conflict with those of another. Without the willingness to give up control, you engage in monologue that cannot promote community. So, being in a community requires the realization that a member's own needs will not always prevail. So, when I say giving up the need for control, I mean loosening your grip and allowing yourself to be supported and trusting that things will turn out as they are meant to be. So, when working in a community, that doesn't mean that everything you say goes. You have to be willing to listen to other person's opinions and thoughts, otherwise, it can cause a lot of conflict and disagreements, which will not be the best for the community. So sometimes you just have to listen and let others take control. Baba 1958 reminds us that this does not mean accepting views of others just to create a false peace. Rather, it means keeping in mind the commitment to greater values. So, yes, even though you might disagree with members of a said community you may be involved in, that doesn't mean it is wrong for saying how you feel, but you also have to keep in mind that what if your ideas and thoughts may not be the best outcome, and let's say perhaps you are disagreeing with the persons or a person in the community Let's say their ideas can be better and it might have a better outcome for the entire community. So, communities are where we exhibit the values to which we are committed. Communities are the mirrors in which we see our true selves. Communities of practice. We may be part of many communities. However, because of limited time, disinterest, or shifting priorities, you may become affiliated with only one of those communities and not highly active in the others. So, no one has enough time or energy to be highly involved in every community with which they identify. So, being a member of a community of practice implies an engagement with others who are working towards some action. The people in that community are doing something, and you are a part of that in some meaningful way. So, in other words, communities of practice are groups of people who share a concern or a passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. For example, a tribe learning to survive. So, these are a group of people striving towards the goal of surviving. Another example is a group of engineers working on a similar problem. So, again, these are a group of people working together towards completing or solving a problem. Each person belongs to many communities of practice, but with varying degrees of centrality. In some communities of practice, we are only peripherally involved. In others, we are centrally involved. Can anybody tell me what it is meant by when they say peripherally involved?
I think is probably supportive, playing a supportive role.
Okay. Anybody else?
Basically, you are on the fringes, but you're not getting very much involved.
Right, correct. So, being peripherally involved means being slightly involved in a community. So, in other words, it's not as the main or important aim, etc., of something. So, example. So, let's say Joe lives in an apartment complex with 100 people. Every day when he goes to work, he takes the elevator to go to the car park. While on the way down, he doesn't interact or speak to anyone that may be on the elevator. And when he returns home from work, he instantly goes to his apartment, again, doesn't talk to anyone, and just shuts the door. So even though Joe is part of that community of living in the apartment complex, he doesn't really associate himself with the people that lives there. So in other words, being peripherally involved is a person who lives an isolated life while being surrounded by people at work, class, or wherever. So others are centrally involved. So could anybody tell me what centrally involved means?
Is it that they are absolutely involved in?
Yes. Yes, you are correct. Right? So being centrally involved is meaning being highly involved in a community. So in other words, it is an important in an important or significant way. So for example, every day Anna attends school on time and patiently waits for the teacher to arrive. She ensures that she listens attentively to what is being taught. She ensures that she takes note of the work written on the board and engages in open discussion with the teacher when questions are asked. Furthermore, she even offers help to students who may need further guidance in a particular topic they may not understand in class. So, being centrally involved is like living a connected life when meaningfully involved in a community. Even within the larger environments, one can find what Harvard sociologist Herman Gaines calls urban villages. Urban villages are many small communities within larger systems. For example, the giant lecture class can become an urban environment of small villages through the use of such class structures such as discussion groups and team projects. The social networks we form in these communities of practice are critical to accomplishing shared goals as well as to our personal identification and satisfaction. A high level of People's involvement in their diverse communities characterizes the nature of American democracy. Most Americans have replaced socializing with neighbors with socializing with friends and colleagues from the workplace. Putnam describes the value of social capital by analog with notions of physical capital and human capital, tools and training that enhance individual productivity. Social capital refers to features of social organizations such as networks, norms, and social trust that facilitate coordination and cooperation for mutual benefit. How can those communities best function to fully engage community members? So, the policies, behaviors, expectations, norms, and other structures may promote or may prohibit your meaningful involvement in that community. Being in a community requires an awareness of reciprocal processes. An individual has to decide to be part of the larger community, and the community has to involve and welcome individuals. Contributive justice and distributive justice. Harvard sociologist Charles Wiley asserts that in any community there are concurrent obligations of contributive justice and distributive justice. So everyone in that community must practice contributive justice. So contributive justice are individuals where individuals contribute to their group's relief that is fair and reasonable for each to do his or her part in the greater whole. In the greater whole, uphold obligations and feel a commitment to share purposes. Conversely, the community must practice the distributive justice. So this means that caring for all community members and ensuring that each is included, is heard, and is not hurt or disadvantaged through community members. Some people in communities do not uphold their responsibility nor share their transcendent values that bind a community together. Communities sometimes act to remove members who are not willing to uphold shared values. For instance, the student who persistently pulls false fire alarms may not be an appropriate member of a resident hall community, nor is the member of a lab team who sabotages other teams' experiments appropriate for that community. Serial reciprocity. So communities thrive on serial reciprocity. So what is serial reciprocity, you may ask? So this exists when people reciprocate for what they have received, example from a parent, a friend, etc., by, by providing something to a third party, regardless of whether a return is also given to or makes its way back to the original giver. So, for example, this means that on his residence hall floor, Chris will help Mary move her refrigerator, and Mary repays that kindness not necessarily by helping Chris back, but when she helps floormate Diana pick up flyers in the hall. Diana likewise pays Mary back when she picks up the trash that has spilled out of the trash can at the end of the hall. The responsibility each floor resident feels towards the others in the community of the floor creates the civic culture of the floor to generate and regenerate a sense of community. I will now pass you on to Lisa, where she will do the development of community.
The development of community. When we think about a community, most of us don't really think much of it, right? We may think that it is just a group of individuals that happen to come together. But in reality, a community does not magically happen as such. The development of a spirit of community must happen intentionally. Here are four stages of development through authentic community. 1. Pseudo community. A group of people who appear to be a community but between whom there is no genuine commonality or depth of interactions. To simplify this, here's an example you might have
experience since it is very common. When you are employed at a workplace for a while, you tend to develop ties to the people, sorry, you work with, right? It is not surprising that people feel they are part of a circle of friends or community based on working together. So, people feel they bonded after spending all these hours together, right? Two, chaos. During this stage, there are different people with different perspectives to set the community's agenda. As different views and opinions are shared, many individuals may choose to give up and retreat instead of working through possible disagreements at this stage. This is where everyone has different views and perspectives. It is important to understand that not everyone will agree with you and not everyone will have the same understanding as you. So therefore everyone needs to be heard, right? 3. Realization. The third stage is the realization that many personal feelings, assumptions, and ideas become barriers to truly listening and understanding. Again, this ties in with the previous mention, which was chaos. After all the chaos, everyone will come to the realization that everyone has different views and everyone needs to be heard. Okay. These four stages I would like to mention that on our previous presentation, which was our last class, previous class we had, I believe it was chapter 8. They spoke about forming, storming, and norming. Well, these four stages relates to that process. Take any time and effort to understand your community well before embarking on a community effort will pay off in the long run. Building community is creating a feel of we out of lots of I. Okay, so what do you all understand by this? Building community is creating a feel of we out of lots of I. Anyone?
I think it refers to building a team or becoming a team
Yeah.
rather than being an individual and on your own. Yeah.
Yes, this means that when you are part of a community, it is about everyone and not you alone. Communities that engage in this development process and reach a stage of authentically functioning as a community often fail to realize that being in a community is a process, not an end state. Next slide, please. Building community building principles. Be committed. Commitment to others is prerequisite for community to exist. 2. Be mindful. Think about what you say and do. In other words, focus on the process, not the outcome. 3. Be unconditionally accepting. Accept others as they are. Do not try to change or control them. In other words, minimize your expectations. 4. Be concerned for both yourself and others. Engage in dialogue whenever possible. Consult others on issues that affect them and be open to their ideas. 5. Be understanding. Strive to understand others as completely as possible. 6. Be ethical. Engage in behavior that is not a means to an end, but behavior that is morally right in and of itself. 7. Be peaceful. Do not be violent or deceitful. Breach value promises. In other words, strive for internal harmony. Next slide, please. Okay, so this table is basically a summary of what I just read. So whenever this PowerPoint is uploaded in the e-classroom, you all can have a look. It's just to simplify what was mentioned previously. Next slide, please. College communities. College campuses have been described as communities of scholars or as learning communities. Yet in reality, a sense of true community is not always a shared experience. Hate crimes happen on campus, incivility can be found in Senate meetings. Some organizations devalue the purpose of other organizations, and not all people know or care about each other. A study was conducted of what students, faculty, and staff would like to change about their campuses. However, all groups agreed that they need a renewed sense of community, one which embraces differences and finds common purpose. The reason for this is so that both students and staff will be more comfortable to interact with each other. The entire college campus is a community that includes multiple communities. There are communities within the various positions of campus, for example, students, faculty, administrators, and staff. There are communities by development, there are communities by departments and by the programs of functional units. For example, the history department, the engineering college department, the activities office. All of these communities are bound together by a common goal of being a community of people committed to learning and to advancing their own education and the education of others. Having a sense of community unites us, right? Being a part of a community makes us feel as though we are a part of something greater than ourselves. It can give us opportunities to connect with people and also reach goals. As a nation, currently we are experiencing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And there's no doubt that this crisis will be a defining moment in history. It is challenging all aspects of our lives. Before this pandemic, it was typically for individuals to consider only family, friends, and peers as part of their community, right? Now, as this crisis continues to develop and evolve, it is also altering our sense of community to consider far more than just who is in our immediate social circle, right? I believe in facing this life-changing event, we have all developed a great awareness of the broader community and society in which we live in, right? So, ways to make a difference in college. 1. If you're an upperclassman, oh, next slide on Vika. If you're an upperclassman, begin or join a mentorship program to advise younger students on class registration, getting involved in activities, or finding their way around campus. 2. Volunteer for a free tutoring organization on campus to help your fellow students improve in their classes. 3. At the end of the semester, create a textbook donation drive so students can donate their gently used textbook to redistribute to low-income students for free. Next is the chapter summary.
Okay, so now it's time for the chapter summary. Framing any group or organization as a community of people working together for shared purposes enhances relational leadership. So what this is saying is that any collection of individuals that come together to work as a community enhances their ability to create positive relationships within a group or an organization. Thinking of that group as a community connects participants to a shared paradigm of expectations and obligations. By being a part of that community, members have certain expectations and requirements of each other that must be met for the community to be successful and fulfilling. To flourish, communities require relational leadership. Relational leadership practices value community as the context in which meaningful change can occur. Next slide, please. So, what's next? All organizational entities can get stale, lose focus, or fail to bring in new members in productive ways. Organizations benefit from intentional strategies to stay renewed and vital. Some of these strategies, according to Gardner 1990, include a common purpose, inclusion, empowerment, ethics, and process orientation. And this is to be covered next week in Chapter 10, which is Renewing Groups, Organizations, and Communities. Next slide, please. So we've come to the end of our presentation. We thank you, our fellow community members, for your patience and time. We hope that you would have enjoyed our presentation and perhaps learned something interesting from it. Thank you once again.
Okay, are there any questions? No questions? All right, I'll stop the recording now.